This documentary is intended to give potential pilgrims an idea about what awaits them on the Camino, and will highlight some of the trials and tribulations involved in attempting this adventure. We have been filming and documenting the Camino for over 17 years, and we have also produced a 13-part series which gives an in-depth guide to every part of the Camino. The A to Z documentary is also intended to help people answer that difficult question when pilgrims return home, when they're asked, well, what was the Camino all about? The Camino de Santiago de Compostela is one of the few great challenges that remain in the modern world. There are no more slow boats to China and no more Wild West. In today's technological world, you can travel cheaply and fast to all corners of the globe. The internet and the use of computers has speeded up both the spread of information and the pace of life. Sometimes today's world feels a bit like a fast spinning roundabout in a playground. It is fun and exciting, but wouldn't it be nice to get off the roundabout for a while? As well as offering many other things, the Camino gives you the chance to step off that roundabout. However, it is not just a nice relaxing stroll through the Spanish countryside. Joining the Camino takes commitment and fortitude. The Camino remains, as it has done for centuries, as a challenge to oneself. It may be, as it is to many in both the past and today, a route of spiritual pilgrimage, but it also is true that those who are walking, cycling or riding the Camino are taking part in a quest. For over 8 centuries, pilgrims have followed the road to Santiago de Compostela, known as the Camino. Although there are a number of recognised routes, the most well-known and best equipped is the one known as the French route, or as they call it in Spanish, the Camino Francés. This route traditionally starts in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port and finishes in Santiago de Compostela about 780 kilometres later, after crossing through some of the most breathtaking scenery of northern Spain. The Camino de Santiago de Compostela, known in English as the Way of St. James, is a collection of old pilgrimage routes, all ending in Santiago, at the city's cathedral, at the shrine and reputed burial place of the Apostle St. James. In recent years, there has been an increase in commercial organisations offering assisted Camino packages, and then there are others who seek to undertake the journey by car. But the real pilgrims, or travellers, are those who use the traditional methods either by their own power, on foot, or on bike, or the rare few that use horses. There is a basic distinction between the tourist and the pilgrim. As it says in the walls of the refugio at Mansilla de las Mulas is a notice which ends, and don't forget, the tourist says, "Give me," the pilgrim says, "Thank you." With the Camino, it is not the destination that is important, but it is the journey itself. Many people only have the time available to walk a small portion of the route and will return year after year to add more distance to their journey. Many of those walking the Camino do not stop at Santiago de Compostela, but carry on another 100 kilometers or so to Finisterre, the end of the world, before they believe that their journey has really ended.
For people planning their Camino, accommodation and use of the albergues is a major consideration. Many pilgrims who are walking the last 100 kilometers from Sarria often book with a specialist guide company that arrange all the accommodation in advance in private rooms, hotels and upmarket hostels. But for many pilgrims, it is the communal living in multi-bedded rooms in private and municipal albergues that becomes an intricate part of the Camino experience. In addition, the cost of the albergues is anything from 5 to 12 euros, and so this does make the journey more affordable for many people.
There are some serious climbs in the Camino, and the first stage from Saint-Jean de Roncesvalles takes you over the Pyrenees, and so you do find yourself walking across some mountains. However, you never hit any serious heights that might leave you short of breath, unless you count some of the breathtaking scenery you will encounter. However, it is true that the variations in altitude, the climbs and descents that you encounter on the Camino is one of the things that many people find the hardest. One of the most impressive climbs is that to the Alto del Pardon, which translates as the Mount of Forgiveness. On top of the summit is where pilgrims slip off the rucksacks and relax. It is the opportunity for a spot of lunch, or to snap some pictures of the impressive line of metal sculptures which were erected in 1996. They are inscribed in Spanish, and the translation is, "Where the path of the wind crosses with that of the stars." The series of figures tell the story of the pilgrims and the route of St. James, and tells the history from the Middle Ages to the present day. There are 12 pilgrims in all, starting with the pilgrims searching, which symbolises the beginning of interest in the route. Next is a group of 3 pilgrims, which represents the growth of the Camino as a popular route of pilgrimage. The next group of 3 represents the merchants and tradesmen on horseback who have followed in the footsteps of the pilgrims, who have set up shop all along the route since medieval times to supply the stream of people following the Camino. The next figure is by itself and represents the decline of the Camino from the mid-14th century to the mid-20th century because of the social, religious and political unrest. At the end of the procession is 2 modern-day pilgrims depicting the modern-day rise in the popularity of the Camino. When the cameras are packed away and the rucksacks put back on, you have to be careful about the climb down, as the descent is steep, so you need to watch your footing. Astorga is a beautiful city with some fantastic architecture. In particular, the cathedral and Gaudi's Bishop's Palace are both well worth visiting. Originally a Celtic settlement, Astorga was conquered by the Romans, who made it one of their most important forts because of all the surrounding gold mines. Historically, it was a very important stopping point in the Camino, and during the Middle Ages it had 22 hospitals where pilgrims could rest on their journey to Santiago. Walking around this delightful city, you pass many statues and monuments. It is also the home to many specialist chocolate shops, as it reputedly was the European birthplace of chocolate. Blisters are the most common ailment on the Camino, and there are very few pilgrims that do not at some time suffer from blisters, especially if your preparation for the Camino was not that rigorous. You just have to make sure that you treat them correctly and give yourself enough rest when required. Otherwise they can get worse and potentially bring your Camino to a premature end. Taking care of your feet by having the proper footwear and wearing at least 2 pairs of socks is very important
especially if you are unused to walking long distances.
The architecture is amazing on the Camino, and one of the most amazing sights is the many bridges the pilgrims walk across. Some are just small footbridges, and some are very impressive bridges that have their own legends and history. One of the most impressive of these bridges is Punta La Reina, the Queen's Bridge, located in Navarra in the town named after the bridge. This Romanesque bridge across the Algar River measures 115 metres and has 7 semicircular arches and is supported by 7 beautiful pillars. It is a key point in the Camino Frances and is regarded as one of its first wonders of Spain. Most pilgrims will take a walk on the bridge if they're spending the night in Punta La Reina, and it also provides a spectacular backdrop to pilgrims departing on the next part of the route in the morning. The bridge is called the Queen's Bridge as it was in the 11th century that the wife of King Sancho the Great decided to build the bridge in order to help pilgrims cross the river. It is amazing that a bridge constructed 1,000 years ago is still in use today. What is more remarkable is to think of all the pilgrims that have crossed that bridge. One of the biggest and most spectacular bridges you will find as you pass through the small town of Hospital de Urbigo. This 13th century medieval bridge has an amazing 19 arches and is located next to the Church of San Juan. The bridge is on the old Roman road from Leon to Astorga and is called the Bridge of the Honourable Pass. This bridge has an incredible legend attached to it. In the 15th century, the knight Don Suro fell in love with a Lady Lenore, but this love was unrequited. Because he was broken-hearted, he took to wearing an iron collar as he was a prisoner of love. He also announced that he would joust any knight brave enough to face him on the long bridge at Hospital de Urbigo, saying that when he had won 300 lances, he would remove the iron collar and become free of his affliction, known as the Tournament of the Honourable Passage. The book Don Quixote by Cervantes is said to have been inspired by this legend. However, if you dig a bit deeper into it, you find that Don Suro actually only wore the iron collar on Thursdays. And he did have 10 of his companions to help him fight the joists, and they only fought there for a month. After 166 battles, Suro and his men were so injured they could not continue, and so declared the mission complete.
Burgos is one of the most interesting cities that you will encounter on the Camino. The architecture is amazing, with its centrepiece being the cathedral, which dates from 1221, with most of the building taking place in the 13th, 14th and 15th centuries. The older part of town surrounding the cathedral is great for wandering around and sampling the atmospheres, the bars and the restaurants. Borghetti is best known as one of the locations in Hemingway's famous novel, The Sun Also Rises. It is a typical Basque village with picturesque houses lining the main street. Borghetti's other claim to fame was being a centre of witchcraft in the 16th century, with its surrounding forest area still known as the Witch's Wood. It does not matter if you're undertaking the Camino by yourself or with friends. You will soon develop a real feeling of camaraderie with your fellow pilgrims. It comes about through a shared sense of purpose and the conversations you have as you walk across the Spanish countryside. This camaraderie is one of the lasting memories many pilgrims have about their Camino, and maybe also explains why many people return year after year to walk the Camino again and again.
You have a lot of time to think about things while you're walking and kind of review your whole life and decide what's important, what isn't important, and maybe figure out how to get rid of that so you have a better life. It really does change your outlook on life.
I think on the mental side, you go through different stages, so it slows you down quite a lot. Instead of just driving for 30 minutes, you just walk for 2-3 days. And in that regards, it totally does change.
I think I have changed a lot. I can't put a finger on exactly what has changed. But I think I'm going to go back home and not live the same life that I was living. I think it really makes you realize the wasteful things that you were doing before you came on this trip. Just wasting time and life and everything.
Whether you visit them for the Pilgrim's Mass or for the religious aspect or out of historical and architectural interest, you will find a huge variety of amazing churches along the Camino. Sometimes you might have to make a small detour, but even the smallest village church might make a lasting impression if you take the time to visit them, especially if you also read up about their history.
I have enjoyed most the community building of people that have rallied together to help cook meals, to help doctor feet, just the community building that I was sort of shocked that I didn't even know that existed.
Your credential is a document that gives you access to the municipal albergues along the Camino. You get your credential stamped along the way as proof of your journey. If you have not acquired your credential by post before you have set out on your Camino, then you need to visit the Pilgrim's office in Saint-Jean. The credential is thought of as being the Pilgrim's passport. The Pilgrim's office will issue you with a credential and also provide you with information about the 2 alternative routes to Roncesvalles. They also warn you about the dangers of bad weather and when the Napoleon route is closed to pilgrims. Plus, they give you an up-to-date list of the albergues all the way along the route to Santiago. The Pilgrim's office is staffed by volunteers, and they are a great source of information and advice for those embarking on the Camino for the first time. When you have finished your Camino and have walked at least the last 100 kilometers, or cycled the last 200 kilometers, you have earned your Compostela. This is a certificate of accomplishment issued by the Pilgrim's office in Santiago. All the pilgrims who state that the purpose of their journey was to some extent religious are eligible for the Compostela.
Do you know what, actually the most difficult thing for me was getting started. I think I was quite nervous about doing it on my own. So when I'd left Burgos, I couldn't find any of the signs. I think the towns are the hardest to navigate your way through because they're so congested and there's always so many lanes, they're a bit disorientating. And I wasn't attuned to looking for the signs yet because it was my first place. So I just started to lose a bit of confidence actually, just even then, and started to question it. Oh my God, what am I doing? Why am I doing this on my own? But since then, you meet people and you find other people who are doing it on their own, and And actually it's fine. You just hook up with people in the evening, and it's really sociable, and in the meantime you can find quiet during the day, and it's really nice after that.
The distances people walk each day is basically all down to the individual. It will depend on where you start your Camino and the time you have available to complete your journey. Some people, if they are young and fit enough, can travel over 50 kilometers per day. However, some people only cover 12 kilometers or even less. It is one of the most common phrases you hear that everybody walks their own Camino. It will also be dependent upon the terrain. The steeper the climb, the less distance you might cover in a day. Plus, you should also have some regard to where you plan to stop for the night. That will have a great influence on your journey planning. Some people prefer to have a degree of flexibility in their plans, while others are very fixed in their chosen distance to be covered in a day. There are many guidebooks which will help you plan your route. This is one of the most important pieces of advice, but also the most ignored. Your rucksack should be a maximum of 10% of your body weight, and you will need to be ruthless in deciding what you will seriously need in your Camino and what can be dispensed with. You will soon realize if you're carrying too much, and can then take steps to lighten your load, either through posting things home or by giving things away.
Be very sparing with what you pack. You don't need half the stuff you think you need. There's nothing worse than having a bag too heavy. After my first day, I dumped at least half of my stuff. Just left it in the hostel. So, yeah, I mean, you only really need something for the evenings to wear, something to wear in the daytimes. You get plenty of chances to wash things. So I brought back like 10 novels and a tent and all this useless stuff. So don't do that. That's my advice.
Because you have to be careful about the weight of your rucksack, most pilgrims will carry very little in the way of spare clothes, and so the daily clothes washing and drying ritual becomes an intricate part of your day. Pilgrims tend to arrive at their destination, have a shower, and then wash their clothes, thus maximising the time available to get them dry for the next day's walking. Most albergues have drying racks or some similar arrangements to make this task as easy as possible. If the clothes are still damp, just pin them to your rucksack and let them dry in the sun as you start your journey the next day. Hence the need for big safety pins carried by many experienced pilgrims.